The Dice Tower, episode 524, Trading Places. Crowds are out, kids are in.
Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games, card games, and most of all, the people who play games. And now, here are Suzanne and Mandy.
Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. In today's show, Mandy and I talk about botanical warriors, musical animals, and we extend the discussion about board game apps with your input in Victory Points. I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Mandy Hutchinson. So, how are things? I feel like it's been a while.
I don't know, time, it's a weird thing. I know you and I have been super busy lately, just with other job stuff and all that goodness. You got a new job, right?
I did. I'm loving it. I get to edit.
Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations. I didn't know that. That's very cool.
Oh, it's fun. I love it. So.
Well, it's a nice to see you and talk to you. Do you want to reveal your lie from last episode's Two Truths and a Lie?
Oh, you know I do. So, let's start. Well, we'll start with me.
Okay.
So, my first little tidbit that I started with was I was electrocuted when I was 5. The second was that I'm a professional makeup artist. And the third, I've won several chess tournaments. So if you guess that I've won several chess tournaments as the lie, you would be correct. So, yes, I was electrocuted. I decided to play, a spaceship with a outlet and stick a, what was it? I think it was a pin. I stuck a pin in there and I was like, yeah, we're going to start the spaceship. And next thing I knew, I had like, bzz, and smelt like burning. I had
my gosh.
fingertips. My hair was sticking up. Let's just say I'm lucky to be alive. That's like my first near-death experience.
Holy cow. You were an adventurous, creative child.
No, I was just weird.
Well, that too. That explains a lot about you, Mandy, I think.
Doesn't it? And professional makeup artist, yes. I've been doing that for like 15 years, so I'm sure people have already poked through my makeup pages online. And chess. It seems everybody in my family is very good at chess, except for me.
It's a game that I know the rules and I can play at the most basic level, but
yeah,
yikes.
I'm right there with you. So, what about you, Suze?
All right. I think that Two Truths and a Lie where I went to an all-girls Catholic school. I accidentally swallowed a Lego head when I was a kid. And I've purchased expansions for games that I don't own at least 5 times.
I'm curious.
All right. The lie was that I accidentally swallowed a Lego head. Who would do such a silly thing? Well, honestly, after hearing you, Mandy, I think childhood Mandy would probably have done this. But
yeah, you know me so well.
But I never have. I was always more selective. It didn't taste like pie, so I didn't want to eat it. But I did, in fact, go to an all-girls Catholic high school all the way through high school, which was quite the interesting experience. And while the Dice Tower is, of course, a very family-friendly show and network, I will say that it is in Catholic high school that I learned how to swear like a sailor. So just going to put it out there like that.
I went to Catholic school, too, so I totally can understand.
Relate,
that.
Yeah. And then, come on, who among us have not accidentally purchased expansions for a game that they didn't own? Right, Mandy? You've done that.
No.
Oh, hush. I don't want to.
You're on your own with that one.
Okay, forget it. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm sure you have. You're just not admitting it.
Right.
All right. Well, we will have some new truths and lies at the end of this episode. But in the meantime, before we talk about games played, because this is a board game podcast, a little bit of show business. Mandy, you just got back from HalCon.
I did. That was actually my first time in Halifax, and Tom was there as well. Rodney was also there, so I got to spend some time with them. And I think that was Tom's first time as well going to Halifax, and it was great. Can I tell you? It was so much fun. So that was on the 22nd to the 24th of September. I've never played so many games at a con, which it's just you're always working, busy. I still had a chance to work and chance to play games. Rodney taught me a few games, one I'll be talking about in this episode, but I was really happy to play Godfather. Just throwing that out there. I didn't quite finish the game with him, but really exciting. But it was a nice con, relaxing, but still, you're still able to get some work done and get some games played. I don't know. I had a really good time.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Do you know offhand, like, how big HowCon was? Attendance-wise?
I don't know numbers. I'm sure Tom would know this, like, right off the top of his head. But I was expecting, I don't know why, I was expecting it to be super, super large. It wasn't, but it was busy. So I don't know the numbers offhand. That probably would be a good thing to find out. So maybe for next time I will have that.
Well, I'm glad you had fun. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It was super fun.
And then Dice Tower Cruise.
Mm-hmm.
We had actually talked about this in an earlier episode, that you and I were kind of bemoaning that we weren't going to be able to go on the Dice Tower Cruise this year. And the fates have stepped in, I guess. And it turns out, dun da da da, that Mandy and I will in fact be attending the Dice Tower Cruise this December. So if you are one of the people who are going to be on the cruise, you will have to put up with our giggliness and silliness on the boat, and we look forward to meeting you and playing games. And I don't know, Mandy, I'm pretty darn thrilled. I'm so excited. I think I'm mostly excited because I think there's like free food everywhere that I can eat, but also excited to, hang out and play games. Yeah.
If it's buffet, I'm there. I'm all about trying different desserts and stuff, and there's no Lent happening this time. So for those who don't know, the last time we went to a con and at the first time I met everyone, I gave up sweets for Lent. So anybody who doesn't know what that is, basically you have to give up something, that you love, or it's basically something that you have in excess of. So that would be sweets for me.
Of course, that didn't stop either Tom or I from eating voluminous amounts of desserts in front of you, which, I don't know, maybe it was mean. It was kind of extra fun.
It was very amusing, though, because I'm like, did they really feel bad? Tom legitimately was like, yeah, well, next time don't give that up for Lent.
Basically, I was like, next time don't give it up for Lent. It was like, fair point. But yeah, so, I'm really looking forward to the Dice Tower Cruise. And so, I think Tom, Sam, Z, Derek, Jason, of course, will all be there as well, which is great. And then the next big thing before Dice Tower Cruise, coming up quite soon, is
Proto-TO. So it'll actually have passed by the time we air this. But, it's basically a convention-type setting where you're playing prototypes. And a lot of familiar designers will be there. So Sen Fung Lim is one that people will probably know. And a few others, Canadian and otherwise, that'll be there showing off some new games that they're working on. So I'll have more when I come back, but very excited to check that out.
Right on. And then, of course, as mentioned before, we will be in Essen in October. Fun little story, I guess, is that Air Berlin, which is the airline I and Eric and Tom were all planning on taking to Germany, has apparently ceased operations. So we got these great emails of like, hey, by the way, no bigs, your flight is canceled.
That is awful.
Yeah, it was a little runaround, but we will be in Essen thanks to the Air France rescue there, and really looking forward to that. But almost as exciting for me and is that we are going to do an Essen preview episode.
Yes.
With Tom and Eric. Exactly right.
I'm sure there's a lot of people celebrating because I know some people do miss Tom and Eric on those off weeks, but guess what? Just for you, we are having that fun joint episode. You'll just get like double the fun and double the goodness.
Yeah, and talking about all the stuff that's coming out at Essen. I've been using the Board Game Geek tool to look at all the releases in Essen. It's a really great tool. And you can click on like interested or must have to kind of create your own personal watch list for a show, which is awesome. I checked it out today and I'm at 115 items. So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's going to be a long episode.
I think so.
So if you are going to be in Germany in October, make sure to stop by and say hi to Mandy and me and the whole Dice Tower crew.
Absolutely. Even if there's time, let's try and get a game in if possible.
What an idea.
I know.
All right, enough of this. Let's talk some games.
Okay, so I'm going to jump right in with my first game, Tesla versus Edison Duel. So someone had asked that we talk about MSRP, so I'm going to try my best. So this is $30 US. I don't have Canadian pricing. I'm sorry. It's not available yet, but there you have it. So it was designed by J.R. Honeycutt and Dirk Niemeyer. Artist is Hiko Gunther, and it's published by Artana. So this is a two-player game only, area control, area influence, card drafting, and economic type game. So in Tesla versus Edison Duel, you're building a company that claims projects in regions around the United States. You want to advance technologies and engage in a propaganda war around AC and DC technologies, and also buy stock shares in smaller electricity companies. So basically, you can control regions with projects. You want to be ahead in the PR race and holding the most valuable stock portfolio. Something really cool about this game, there is an auto-win condition. So your character that you choose in the game has something that allows you to win, and when you meet that condition, you win immediately. If not, it's after 3 rounds that this happens. I've never won with the condition. It's always been after the 3 rounds have played, and then you determine, who's most ahead. And I was really good with the track. The name is escaping right now, but there's a track that you can move up on. It's one of the actions on the cards because it gives you free actions. Mm-hmm. So my favorite move was blocking the other player. So you need to have a character that has either AC or DC, and then the other player has the opposite. So let's say my character had AC power. I would make sure to pick the token, so that only AC could be powered on those cards that are kind of in the middle of the table, so the other player cannot build in those areas.
You are so mean.
I know. Lately, I've just been really cutthroat. Doesn't mean that I won, but I liked the concept. So for me, this is a quick game. It literally plays in 15, 20 minutes or so.
Oh, that's super fast.
Yeah, maybe a bit longer than that. Maybe like half an hour. Half an hour would be accurate, but we've been playing it so often. We've been playing it really fast. I've not played the original Tesla versus Edison, but it interests me, especially now after playing this one. This is not available yet. I think it's on pre-order potentially. It was a Kickstarter, so it's coming. Okay. Loved it. I know that, it seems like we love every game. No, I love this one.
That's awesome. I do actually now, I remember that it was on Kickstarter. I covered it in my Board Game Breakfast segment for on YouTube.
Right.
And I remember thinking, ooh, this one actually looks more interesting and compelling to me than the original Tesla versus Edison. It just seemed really streamlined and snappy with the actions and stuff like that. So it's interesting to hear that, because I know you, Mandy, and you definitely do not love every game. So it's interesting to see that enthusiasm from you because, cool. Very, very cool.
Yeah, it's a game I did a stream on it. If I have to play a game several times, I want to enjoy it. Nothing is worse than having to play a game several times. You're like, oh my gosh, this is painful. So I did not have that vibe here. I definitely recommend to someone, even as a nice lunchtime game with 2 players, it is fantastic. So Tesla versus Edison Duel, $30 USD. Oh my gosh, I'm so Canadian that I just said that. But that's how much it costs. So on to Suze, what is the first game that you want to talk about?
So I'm going to move on to my next game. And look at me, Mandy. I'm not even teasing you about how you pronounce project at all.
I was waiting for it, actually. I'm like, oh, she's going to nail me.
Completely moving along, not teasing you at all. See how good I'm being?
Uh-huh.
I got to play an early release copy of Azul from Plan B Games. And, Plan B is the newer game publisher started by Sophie, who left Z-Man Games. And Sophie's one of the women that I really respect and admire in the board gaming industry. I think she's smart and makes great choices. If you look at, the games launched under the Z-Man label, I think they're awesome. Of course, Zev had things to do with that as well. But with Plan B, they first released Century Spice Road, which has been a pretty big hit. And then now they have Azul, which is designed by Michael Kiesling, who some people may know as half of the infamous Kramer and Kiesling design duo. And, if you need cred, Michael Kiesling's a 2-time Spiel winner for Tikal and Torres.
Oh, wow.
Which, Yeah, I mean, we're not joking around here. And, he's actually designed a number of games that I really, really enjoy, like Coal Baron, the card game,
Yep.
Abluxen, Vikings. Great, great games. So Azul, off the bat, you've got Plan B Games, you've got Sophie behind the scenes, you've got Michael Kiesling on the design table. The art is by Philippe Guérin and Chris Williams. And it's really beautiful. It's really it's very simple art, but it's evocative of the theme of this tile lane, and all the colors I think are very rich and warm, which is great. And I think that this is going to be retailing for $39.99 in American dollars. American dollars. And what Azul is really about is kind of this abstract art of azulejos, which I'm sure
It's fine.
Thank you. And you're basically building tile walls and patterns. And to do that, you're using these physical tiles on your player board. And first of all, it's stunning. These tiles, the colors I mentioned already, they've got pretty little patterns on them, I think, which in part helps with color blindness, because there are some solid blue and solid red, but then there's blue with a pattern on it and that kind of thing. And they are chunky. And they feel good. They look like Starburst. Don't eat it.
They do.
But they look like pretty Starburst. Like they're but they're really hefty and chunky. So basically what happens is that you're going to lay out these tiles in the center, and you're going to put a bunch of, you're going to put round market boards in the center, I should say. And then you're going to drop some of these little resin tiles on top of it. And then basically players take turns taking tiles from the market. So you can take all of a single color worth of tiles off of any one location. So if there's 2 blue and 2 red, you can take 2 blue, or you can take 2 red.
Right.
And then whatever you don't take goes into the middle of the table. And then the next person goes, and they take all the tiles of color. And you keep on going. The trick is that, as the middle is filling up, you can also at any time choose to take the tiles from the middle. But again, you have to take all of the tiles of a single color. So if there are 8 yellow tiles in there, you got to take all 8, which is not necessarily a good thing. When you get these tiles, you put them on your board in this prep area, and maybe the top row is just a single tile spot and the bottom row is a 5 tile spot. Right. And you can only put one color in each row, and any excess falls to the floor and goes to this line at the bottom that gives you negative points. So if you take 8 yellow tiles, you could be getting pretty hefty negative points. Not that I'm speaking from experience, but of course I am, because yeah. And then after after all the tiles have been drained from the market, then you move them over into the tile wall area. And if you've filled up a row, you can move one of those tiles over into the appropriately marked spot. Ta-da! If you haven't filled out a row, that's okay. Those tiles hang out until the next round, and you can try to fill it then. But the goal is really to fill up your wall, because you're going to score points. It's kind of Quirkle scoring. Yeah. So, if it's 1 tile, you get 1 point. If it's 2 tiles, you get 2 points. If it's, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And as you fill up the board, you get bonus points if you fill up a full column. You get bonus points if you get all of the blue spots filled and things like that. Personally, I've played this at 2, 3, and 4, and I love it. I really like abstract games. This is a beautiful, lighter abstract game, but it still gets you. It still twists out your brain. And I could see where, if you're kind of analysis paralysis prone, you could get kind of caught up in the permutations of options on what's on the market and the spaces you have and things like that. But for me, it was very satisfying to play, and I felt clever when I planned ahead and figured out, I have to take that set of tiles now, because if I have to take it later, I'm going to hose myself, right? Or I have to take, Mandy really needs that yellow tile. Well, I'm going to take it from her and, make it so she can't complete her row, right? So there's that little bit of abstract meanness there, too.
Yes.
It's definitely tighter at 2 players than at the higher player count, because more tiles are going into the center. It's filling up. The game does scale very well. You put out fewer market boards, but it gets meaner at 2, which I quite enjoy.
Of course you do. I played it at 2. That's because I've only played it once.
Okay.
And that's the first game I played was with another person. So it was only at 2. And of course, I played with someone very good at these types of games, so they blocked me on every single, move I wanted. So I ended up having to take more tiles. It literally was like me between 0 and 20 for the entire game.
Yeah, were you just dropping tiles to the floor, like just negative points left and right? Yeah,
just left and right.
I'm not surprised. Yeah, that 2-player game can get rough, but I like it that way.
Yeah.
So, and I mean,
there are Joker tiles. Did you know that?
Not really.
I didn't. Oh, I saw it online, so I was like, oh, "Wait, now I don't have those." Somebody online said, "I guess it's a promo." I don't know if it's available only at Edison, but they have Joker tiles. They're kind of clear with a pattern. They're really cool. Oh, they look really cool.
I'm gonna do some internet searching after we finish recording.
Adding more to your Essen list.
Seriously, because I mean, really, this is that kind of game. This is a keeper for me. It's quick. It's easy to set up. It's got gorgeous components. It's beautiful on the table. It scales well, 2 to 4 players. There's also a reverse side to the player board that doesn't have the wall pattern established. So you still have to follow placement rules, but it gives you a little more flexibility, which I think is actually also a constriction. It actually probably makes it more difficult when you don't have it kind of laid out. So that is Azul from Plan B Games. And I think the official release is Essen actually this year.
That's what I was told, so I believe it is Essen. So, from what I've heard, they're not doing pre-orders or anything like that. So, yeah, people are panicking.
We're rushing to the booth. Okay, gotcha.
Exactly. So, my next game that I want to talk about is Samurai Gardner. This retails for $22.95 Canadian, so $14.49 US. I got both prices there. Nice. And I believe this one's on pre-order if anyone's looking for it. Designer is Hisashi Hayashi. Artist is Kevin Hong and Ryo Niamo. Publisher is Japan Brand, Ozaku Brand, and Osprey Games. It's 2 to 5 players, and it plays in about 15 minutes. It's an abstract tile placement type game. So when I say tile placement, it's more like card placement, but they kind of look like tiles. So I didn't realize this, but it was first published as Ido Yashiki, which I have not played. This game is very reminiscent of Honshu for me. It has this similar type of concept where you're taking cards and placing them on top or beside another card to create kind of rows of certain types in the game. So we'll talk about that in a moment. The first thing that you do in this game is something called seizing. So you have 3 cards that are placed out. So in our case, we played 3 players, so we placed out 3 cards. It's based on number of players. And I don't even think I say it right. You might know. You have to kind of like slap your hand on the card that you want. I'm going to tell you, this is my least favorite part of the game. I don't like dexterity stuff and stuff like this. I just like claw someone with my fingers because I have nails, and I did hurt someone playing this game. So that solidified why I'm not a fan of this sort of thing. But the leader, the active player that round, has to kind of say, what is it? Is it like A? It's like, and then when everyone's ready, they go, or E, and then the other players go O when they're ready.
Yeah.
Or we all go, oh, and then you have to slap the card that you want. Yeah, anyway. See, right there. My brain just kind of went, So that's what you have to do to get your card. And then once you acquire the card you want, you have to place it in your garden. So you're gardening with that. And there are restrictions on how you place it. Like you can't place it underneath. You can't place it horizontally. You can't cover too many of the pictures or the illustrations on the card. And then you can score if you have enough to score. And I mean, it's beneficial to score multiple types. I think there's pawns. I'm probably getting the names incorrect, but there are 4 elements that you're trying to score in the game. And once you've scored it, you flip it over. So the next round that happens, you cannot score for that element until it turns back up. And the cards don't turn back up until you've scored all 4. And then they all turn back up, and then you can score them again in future rounds. It's beneficial to do more than once at the same time because you get bonus points for scoring multiple rows. Anyways, that continues until you hit, I think it's 25 points, if I'm not mistaken, to end the game. So overall, I like the concept. Like I said, it was very familiar to me because it was kind of like Honshu, but didn't have like the resource cubes and things like that. Was not crazy about the seizing portion of the game, which was the kind of dexterity, slapping the cards. Not a fan of that, but the actual overall game I did enjoy. It's quick, plays in 15 to 20 minutes, so enjoyable enough for me that I would play it again.
Interesting. So did you try it with the drafting variant?
I didn't. I just read something about it being easier, and I was like, I'll try the regular way. But I think
hardcore.
Yeah, that's right. That's how I roll. How about you? Well, I think you had mentioned it, right?
Exactly. So yeah, I've gotten to play Samurai Gardner a couple of times now, and I've played both the drafting variant and the normal way that you play it with that speed thing. And I know a lot of my friends are not speed dexterity fans,
right?
And so we played the drafting, and we enjoyed it. And it was, for this. The game is beautiful. The art is beautiful. The Osprey version uses art by Kevin Hong. The Japanese version uses the Ryo Nyamo art, and it's a little more cartoony and cutesy. But I think the Osprey, it's just lush and rich, and you get these path tiles, and the ponds have little fish in it, and the path tiles have occasionally there's going to be like a kitty resting and napping or a dog walking, and it's just really enchanting. And the drafting version just felt thematic when you're going in there, like you're building out your garden, and you draft a card and you put it down, and it's very pleasant. Then we played the speed variant, and all of a sudden the tension and the energy notched up for us hugely. Okay. So, and that the competition for cards via drafting versus that competition for the cards that are on the table with that speed element felt very different. And I gotta say, I prefer the game with the speed variant. I think that you're making decisions differently, and it's more likely, you also know what you miss. If you don't get the card you want, then you've got that kind of disappointment that you didn't get it, which for me kind of added emotionally to the game. I don't know. Well, because then you got to deal with it. You got to be smart tactically and take the card you didn't, intentionally want to get, and then figure out how to maximize for it.
See, maybe I'm just not aggressive. So, a little cutthroat.
Oh my gosh.
I can't. I have to get physically aggressive. I'm like, I don't want to, I don't want to hit someone. So I'll just take this one. I don't know. It doesn't make me feel good. Let's put it that way.
And I get that. And I do know a lot of people that are not speed games, and I mean there is this argument that in speed games whoever's fastest is always going to win. I will say I don't think that's the case here. With kind of the scoring you're talking about, where those scoring tiles have to be face up, and you have to be strategic and plan ahead on when you're going to trigger those and things like that. It's not a game where the fastest person is going to win, which I think helps a lot too. So it's interesting to hear that for you, I get what you're saying, that you don't enjoy that part. But for me, I thought it added a lot to the game.
Yeah, so there you go. Two differing perspectives, and I'm sure a lot of people will probably disagree with me, but that's just my preference. But like I said, not a bad game. It's just certain elements I wasn't crazy about. So,
and that was Samurai Gardner, right?
Samurai Gardner, correct.
Well, I was actually going to talk about Masmorra this week, because I love Masmorra, and it's been a while since I got to the table, and I was so excited to talk about it. But then we had a game night, and my friend brought over Castles of Burgundy, the dice game. Nice. A roll and write version of Castles of Burgundy. So, of course we were going to play that. I mean, come on. Yes. So, Masmorra, I'm sorry, you're going to have to wait to another episode. We're going to talk Castles of Burgundy. So this is kind of the third iteration. There's Castles of Burgundy, there's Castle of Burgundy, the card game, and now the dice version.
Right.
Riding the awesome wave of roll and write wonderfulness. And this was designed by Stefan Feld and then Christophe Toussaint. There's no artist listed, but I assume it's the same artist as Castles of Burgundy, because the art is basically the same. And of course, it's published by Alia and Ravensburger. So in the box, you get a pad of score. It's a roll and write. You get some custom dice. You get 5 custom dice, some pencils, and a pad of paper. Ta-da! That's it. And the pad actually includes 3 different score sheets. So there's a little variability. All the players are supposed to play the same map at the same time, but at least, you can mix it up, which is nice. And the boards look like a Castles of Burgundy board, where you have all the hexes with kind of the different features, like the oceans or the farms or the castles. And then there's spots marking abilities, etc. around it. And so you're going to roll the dice, and there's a timer die, which is what paces the game. And you either mark off 1 time tick or 2 time ticks, whatever. And then 2 dice have colors, and then 2 dice have numbers. And so you roll it, and you're like, oh, we have green and yellow, and 2 and 5. And then you kind of match it up on what you can fill in your board. And the different areas or the different hex types have different requirements. So, like, for example, in mines, you can only fill in a mine when you roll a 1 or a 2. And a gray for the mines. But in farms, you can put any number you want in a farm, but all the connected farm bits have to have the same number. And you can only do 1 per turn. So if I fill in a 5 into my farm last turn, I can only fill it with a 5 this turn, that kind of thing.
Right.
So, a little bit of different placement rules there. And then when you fill in an entire farm section or entire mine section or whatever, you get to get points for that. And then you also get an ability or that you can use. So maybe you get to change the color of a die for a turn, or you get to change the number of a die, or you get to take 2 turns, like kind of mark 2 things off in a single turn instead of just 1. And you just kind of keep track of this on the score sheet. There's little spaces where you circle it when you earn the ability, and then you cross it off when you've used it. So it's really easy to track. And you just play through this. There are 3 scoring rounds, and they're timed by that timer die, and then, when you're done, you're done. It was very, very quick to play. There's absolutely no setup, right? You just rip off some score sheets and go to it.
Nice.
And I loved it. Now,
Really?
I loved it. I'm biased towards roll and writes because it's one of my favorite genres of gaming. So, red alert signs around that. But this one was really engaging. It felt Castles of Burgundy-ish in a much shorter time.
Okay.
And I had somebody ask me about it online about, well, how does it compare to the Castles of Burgundy card game? And I gotta say,
I was just about to ask you that, actually. Yeah.
Knocks it out of the park for me. Like, I
Really?
like Castles of Burgundy, the card game, actually. But I actually find it fiddly. And it's a table hog. You gotta lay all these cards out, and there's a lot of card moving around and things like that. So it's fiddly. Really, all Castles of Burgundy, the card game, has over the board game is the box portability. Mm-hmm. Whereas Castles of Burgundy, the dice game, still gives me a little bit of that Castles of Burgundy feel, but it's super duper quick. It's super duper portable, and it is totally something that I can't remember. Portable, quick. What else did I say? Not fiddly.
It. Yeah,
Takes
not
up no
fiddly.
space. Let's go with all these things. Oh, also, really, you can play it with an unlimited number of people as long as you have score sheets. It's that kind of
cool.
rolling, right?
So it's like an avenue sort of thing.
Absolutely. Great analogy. So, that's Castles of Burgundy, the dice game. I don't know how much it is to get this game. We heard about it. And I was like, I gotta have this game. And so my friend, Marguerite Cottrell, she actually put together this group order, and we ordered a case of these games from France and had them.
So jealous.
I know, that's the extremes that we will go to sometimes. So that's how I got the game. I assume the game will be under $20 because the other small box versions of like Las Vegas, the dice game, Broom Service, the card game, they're all very inexpensive, under $20 US. So I assume Castles of Burgundy dice game would be in that price range. And boy, it's, if you like this genre of game at all, or if you ever feel like, oh, I'd love to play Castles of Burgundy, but I only have 20 minutes, you gotta check this one out. I really like it.
I'm interested in this one because, Stefan Feld, of course, come on. And I have the original, and I have the card game, which is crazy, but I wanted something that I could play at lunch, and the card game was literally just, like, hitting that hour mark at 2 or even 3 players. So I was like, yeah, I need something a bit shorter. So that's why I was like, ooh, this sounds kind of good. So I'm thinking it might have to be something I pick up at Edison.
I think that would be a wise choice for sure.
Yahoo, exciting. So my last game that I'm choosing to speak about is London. And this was taught to me by the amazing Rodney Smith. I was so happy. So thank you, Rodney. This game retails for $59.95 Canadian and is about $39.99 US. And I believe it's on pre-order. Designer is Martin Wallace, and this is a basically the second edition, I'm assuming, of
Right.
this game. The artist, there was none listed. Publisher is Osprey Games. Plays 2 to 4 players, and it's a card game, and there's some city building. So in this particular game, you're tasked with rebuilding London in the decades following the Great Fire. So you're basically trying to juggle your building requirements, your bank loans, which I took none of, by the way. That was all Rodney and everyone else.
So no debt.
No debt. I was not living that. I mean, I can't talk about real life, but not in the game. And so you're juggling that, your bank loans, and also poverty, because you're trying to, you want a nice city. I'm not saying that poverty doesn't exist, but you just don't want it to be overrunning your city. So the game features a mechanism of playing cards to develop your city, and then you can run your city by basically taking all the card actions simultaneously. So on your turn, you have a set of cards, and I think you start with 4, if I'm not mistaken. I might be getting that number incorrect, but you do start with cards in hand. And on your turn, you're going to draw a card. You have a market that's kind of set up. When I say market, it's not really like populated. It's going to have cards put into it when players decide they want to discard cards. But you can take an action to take one of these cards out of the market and then potentially take one blind off the top. You can also buy these other cards that they have, which will give you bonuses right away when you buy them. Mm-hmm. And then they kind of sit into your city, and then you can run them and take a bonus that's on them. Some of the cards are great. You need to make sure, though, that you have the correct colors of the card. So, for example, if you want to place a card in your city as an action that's red, you need to get rid of a card that's red. So you need to make sure that you have corresponding cards in your hand. And then they have this one particular card. I can't remember the name of it now. It's like Poppers or something to that effect. They basically just sit in your hand. You can't get rid of them unless something specifically says you can get rid of them. And it's not great because you're going to end up taking poverty for those cards. Mm-hmm. So how does that happen? Let me tell you. So when you run your city, you get to take all the actions on your cards, and that could be like discarding cards. It could be getting money. Some of them generate money for you. You can take another action. Basically, instead of taking a negative action on a card, another card will get you to prevent that. Anyway, there's lots of things can happen when you run your city. Once you've run your city, all those cards turn over. They're no longer active, but you take poverty. So now you count every card that you had in your city plus cards in your hand, and you take 1 poverty for each one. Mm-hmm. So there were times where I had like 20 of those things sitting in front of me. I'm like, okay, we need to get rid of them. Mm-hmm. But you can get rid of them by cards that you can, obtain. And when you run your city, it will allow you to get rid of poverty. So, and you can go over buildings that are already built that you haven't used yet. You can cover those up with new ones. So basically, at the end of the game, you want to make sure that you've repaid all your loans, because let me tell you, loans are crazy. You lose crazy amount of points if you have loans at the end of that game, which I did not. Poverty also, takes off points for you, so those will take negative points. But basically, you count up any victory points that you had listed on any of your buildings that were in your city. Even if they were turned over, you still count all of those. You're going to count some money because they count for points, and then you take off any points that you had for poverty or loans. So basically, whoever built the best running city, we'll go with that, wins the game. I really enjoyed it. I mean, I was expecting something different, and I know I heard people talk about the original, and there was like a map. They got rid of that map, so that's no longer in the game. Instead, they have those, I love that. You did like it, because I know I was talking to Tom about it, and he was like, I need to play this one to see the difference.
Sure.
But I've heard other people say they were not crazy about the map. So instead you get the cards that generate those benefits on the side right away when you acquire them.
Okay. Well, I think the map had like proximity elements to it. So are there proximity elements in this version of it?
What do you mean by proximity elements?
Like you had to you had to expand out, and you couldn't reach certain areas if you hadn't gotten a path to them first.
Oh, no, that's not at all.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
No. Huh? Basically, you're just putting these cards that you acquire into your city as long as you have a matching one to get rid of by placing it in that kind of market area I was telling you about. Yeah, and then basically when you're ready to run your city, you run your city, and then those cards are no longer usable. You have to put more cards into your city.
Interesting. And then, of course, I haven't played London in 2 years. I mean, all I really remember is loving it and the running of the city and the poverty. I remember that too. So It's good to hear that you enjoy it. It's. I remember being at like a lighter Martin Wallace game,
Right,
and
it
I
is.
tend to like lighter Martin Wallace games. So,
Right. Like, I'm looking forward to Brass. That's coming out soon.
which is a heavier Martin Wallace
Which
game.
which is generally, right up my alley. But I thought, okay, I didn't really know anything about London. I had never played the original, so it was only based on what I had heard about it. But I liked the fact, I mean, there were points where I was like, oh my goodness, I had so many cards. I'm like, how am I going to get rid of these cards? You had to be, you had to really manage the cards you were choosing to help you get rid of poverty and help you to reduce your hand size. Because, I mean, you had to go back down, you had to, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't even think. I was going to like expend cards. No, discard. There's the word. To discard to a certain number in your hands if you had too many. So it was hard. And I mean, in that sense, I was like, oh my gosh, I want this card. I want this card. I want this card because they were so good.
Yeah.
But I couldn't keep them. So I mean, I enjoy those elements. The loans, anytime a game has loans, it always is awful because, you're in that position where you really want to take a loan, but it's going to come back to bite you if you do. So I opted to have a more difficult game by not choosing to take a loan, but I fared okay.
Nice. Very nice. I'm glad to hear you like it. I think the Osprey version looks gorgeous. The box is elegant. I really like what Osprey is doing in board games right now. I think they've got really great taste. So I'm excited to try this version.
Yeah, so I'd definitely like to get more plays in. I think we'll be doing a stream of it soon. But yeah, very good one. So that's London. Check it out.
Well, on kind of the other end of the spectrum in games, I guess, is Okey Dokey. Which actually, I didn't realize, you've got Samurai Gardner, which is a Hisashi Hayashi game. And Okey Dokey is a Hisashi Hayashi game as well, with art by Rio Niamo. So kind of synergies there that I didn't even expect. And the original publisher was Akazu brand in Japan, and then Tasty Minstrel Games has brought it over. And Tasty Minstrel's done a really nice job of seeking out games from, the Asian market and making them, accessible to the Western market a little bit more. And that makes me very, very happy. So Okey Dokey is a cooperative game, card-based cooperative game, about animal musicians, about creating a beautiful symphony with animal musicians, of course, as one does. And basically you've got 5 different types of, musician, like piano and drums and violin or whatever. And they're all in different colors. And your goal of the game, as a cooperative game, is just to get all 50 musicians out on the board properly. And then, hey, you win. In that way, it feels a little bit like The Game, which, won the Spiel a couple years ago. And so players will have just a small hand of cards, and then they can either play a card to a row appropriately or play this reset card. And the reset cards, can help and also hurt. So you play a card, and your goal is to go from low to high, left to right. So if you can play a green 1, great. And then if you can play a green 2 after that, great. But what if you can't? What if you only have like a green 7, right? And you have to play it. So you play the green 7. Well, then you're hosed. How do you get the green 1 back out, right? If you have to go low to high. Right. Well, that's when you can play a reset card after it. And the next time you play a reset card, and then you can play the 1 after that or whatever. So the reset cards are very, very useful for that. But they really aren't there for convenience. See, that's where Hisashi gets you, right? Because he gives you this reset card, and you're like, oh, that's too easy. But really, it's a trick. Because in the rules, you must have one and only one reset card in each column at the end of the game.
Oh.
So you're looking, and there's only so much communication you can do between players about what's in your hand. You can't say, obviously, exactly what you have. You can say, oh, I have 3 violins or whatever, but that's about it. So you have to plan ahead about, okay, I have to use a reset in this column because we already have it, but does that waste it? Is that a bad use? When do you do one earlier or later, or how are you spreading them out? That kind of thing. And there's 2 per row that you have to work in these columns. And boy, oh boy, that's a chestnut right there for sure. But the gameplay overall is very, very simple. And I will say, I am playing this primarily solo because it's a great 15-minute solitaire game that you get to lose by yourself all the time because I'm not winning it very much, but I really enjoy it. It's very quick and easy to set up. The cards are bright and colorful, and they have these cute little illustrations of animals playing music. And I just think it's delightful. It's challenging. It is more than luck of the draw. It is absolutely strategic in how you are using those reset cards, balancing that against what you have in your hand, etc. And so for this, small, inexpensive, I think it retails at like $15 in the US. It's just a little card game. It's a delight. If you like cooperative games, if you like the game, or if you like cooperative games in general, or if you like solo card games, solitaire games, Okey Dokey in the US by Tasty Minstrel Games is definitely one I think you should check out.
So this one is one that I have that's wrapped in plastic. It just doesn't mean that it's bad. I just have a lot of games to get through. And I had heard the comparison that it was like the game. So I'd be curious to see if this is one that they turn into an app potentially.
Ugh, I would love that. I would love that. And, Tasty Minstrel doesn't have any board game apps out that I can think of.
Yeah. So here you go. Here's one, like a nice quick one that plays well to start with, and people might be a little familiar with the gameplay. I don't know. That sounds like a good idea to me.
I think we should start nudging them with our elbows, Mandy. Hey, make an app. Yeah, because it's a good one. It would be great for an app. I think you're spot on there.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to try this one. It looks really fun. Hit that pledge button and take my money.
Right now is when we would be talking about a crowdfunding project. And, we felt that covering crowdfunding was really important because it is a big part of the hobby and the industry right now. A lot of games are being made and funded through crowdfunding. There are controversies about it, and it is a fascinating subgroup within our niche in general. And, we wanted to bring that relevance into our show. And so that's where Take My Money came from. But
big but.
Big but. We are listening, we are reading, we are getting feedback on the show, and when you are providing constructive feedback, we really appreciate it. And I think the comment on the Take My Money segment that really hit home for me was someone bringing up that they don't always listen right after air. Sometimes they're weeks behind. And by then, the campaign is over. And, that is a great point. Relevance, timing is an important element. And the Dice Tower has such a wonderful listenership that, can be, you save them up, you listen later, whatever. And we don't want an entire segment to be that time-based irrelevant.
And can I tell you, I didn't even think about it. But when I heard that, I was like, it makes so much sense. You know what I mean? You go back and listen to it. It's like, oh, well, that Kickstarter happened, a year ago, 2 weeks, whatever. It's no longer relevant versus all the other things we talk about are games that already exist. It makes sense that it's something that perhaps that we may not continue with.
Yeah, absolutely. And so thank you, everybody that provided your constructive feedback on that. We really appreciate it. And we're listening to you. So I think Mandy and I have talked about it, and, we've got other ideas for other segments, and we've gotten a lot of feedback that people are interested in us talking about kid games and family games and youth gamers. I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. Mandy, you are a teacher.
Yes.
And so we are going to try some new stuff, and Take My Money is going to hit the shelves. And we will find other ways. We may certainly bring up crowdfunding as a victory points topic because of all those relevant reasons I talked about earlier. It is a big part of our hobby. But for now, we are going to bid a quick adieu to Take My Money. And thank you, everybody, for your feedback.
And before we end off on there, we are thinking about, we're going to do it. Shelf staple is, going to be a shelf staple. It'll be a regular. So we had it every second podcast. So to make up for that gap, I think, maybe I'm overstepping, that we will have shelf staple as a regular because people really enjoyed it. I really enjoy it. I know, Suze, you enjoy it. So, the next step was to have it as a regular part of the show.
There you go.
Let your fingers do the walking in. Tap that app. All right, everyone. Now it's time to get into the app part of the show. So I'm going to kick it off. I decided to choose Star Realms. So anybody who knows me, I'm obsessed with this app. But I thought so many people had it, and apparently I was wrong, because I have actually recommended it to quite a few people. So Star Realms is designed by Robert Doherty and Darwin Castle. Developer, it's on iOS and Android, and developed by White Wizard. So Star Realms, if you don't know, it's a deck-building card game, and it's outer space combat. So anybody who knows me knows I'm not a huge space theme type person in a game. It's not my favorite theme. But whatever, it seems like I'm loving it in Star Realms. So in Star Realms, you get to kind of trade cards and in like a combat style. So these trades are used to acquire new ships and bases from the cards being turned face up in the trade row. So in the app, they're doing it for you. And these are coming from the trade deck. So you're using ships and bases to acquire or to generate more trade or to generate combat to attack your opponent and their bases. Basically, once you reduce your opponent's score to 0, or their authority, I guess is what it's called, versus score, then you win. It is literally that straightforward. Now, there are other packs you can add to the game. Like they have the heroes, which I was a little leery about, and I don't know if I still 100% love that aspect, but I do love Star Realms, so I'm willing to overlook that. But I do know that they have quite a few expansions that you can add on in the app, and they've just recently revamped it. So I think I was still working off the old one for a long time, and that just stopped working, and then they came out with the newer one. Have you downloaded the new one yet?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I thought so, because it's really nice. And I know we had seen it months ago before it launched, and it was awesome. So if you don't have Star Realms, it is one you can check out. 2-player, I mean, you can make it more players, but you need more decks to do that. I actually started off playing this as an app, and then I later acquired the actual game. But I don't know. I really like it. I enjoy it, and I know I've played with a lot of people online, and it's hit or miss with me, but I have a lot of fun with it.
That's so great. I always like hearing it's absolutely one of my all-time favorite apps. And I saw you know that you were talking about. I'm like, yeah, woohoo. I have almost 1,800 online games under my belt of Star Realms. So
What?
Shush! I don't have a problem. You have a problem.
No, obviously you have a Star Realms problem.
I like it. It's so quick. It's so easy. The app is so polished. And one of the things that I think White Wizard did that's super clever, and they were really one of the first in market to do this, and really not enough people have emulated them, is that if you buy the content on one platform, it will actually unlock it on all platforms. So if you have an Android phone but an iPad, you can unlock that content on both of your devices with a one-time purchase. And I think that that is super cool. We all have budgets and things like that we stick to. So that's another little random element of Star Realms that I like.
I didn't know that at all, actually. So that's very good, actually. This is one of the first apps that I actually ever had. And I have to do a shout out to Netters Plays and to Charmbo. They're the two that got me into this. And played it so much, but I didn't know that that he was able to transfer to other devices and not just because I know Apple, of course, if you have an iPad and a phone, it goes directly onto it. So I didn't realize that they did that or kind of pioneered that. But the way this one looks is really nice, really smooth, and I really love the when it explodes on something. Now I'm not doing any justice here, but I like those sort of things. Like you can feel the ship shaking, like it's. You feel immersed in the app. I know. That for me is exciting, and it's not a super long game. Like, I mean, usually get destroyed within, you can play a game in 15 minutes or something. But I thought it's a well done app, and they've made it even better with the new one that's come out. So I really enjoy it. I love the fact that you can see it from different angles. Works really well. So my choice is Star Realms.
Mandy, we've never played against each other.
Are you serious?
Have we ever played Star Realms against each other?
I don't think you're in my rotation. That's bad.
I'm not in your rotation? Excuse me? Oh, we are going to have some words after we hit stop on this recording.
Oh, yeah.
All right. We got to get that going. I am excited to play Star Realms against you now that I know how much you love it.
I better start studying up.
I didn't say I was good. I just said I played it a lot.
Yeah, all right. I don't believe you, but all right.
I'm laying the trap.
1,800 games under her belt.
Just
On.
Totally normal. Well, another game that I really, really like in app form is Qwixx, which, in real life is a roll and write game. Shocker. I do like other types of games, people, I promise.
Yeah.
Stefan Bendorf is kind of now, I guess, the godfather of roll and write games because, he does all these amazing games. I think he designed the game, too. He designed Qwixx. What's interesting, one thing that's interesting about Qwixx is the group that got the license to make an app for Android versus iOS are two different groups.
Oh.
That doesn't happen too often. So I'm going to talk about the iOS app because that's what I have in play. But I know the Android app, it exists. It's official. It was developed by Reinhard Stope and totally legit version. It has a different feature set than what I'm going to talk about. So just be aware of that. The iOS version was developed by Outline Development. And boy, oh boy, does this app get a lot of play. Qwixx is a very simple roll and write game. It's Yahtzee-ish almost, where you have dice and a score pad and colored strips in red, yellow, green, and blue. And two of the rows go from low to high, and two of the rows go from high to low. And you are basically rolling colored dice that match those rows with a couple of white dice, and then pairing them up to come up with a total. And, these two dice put together make a 7, and one of the dice is red, so you can mark off the 7 in red. But you can never go from right to left. I'm like literally trying to figure out my right from my left. That's great. You can never go quote unquote backwards. So if you mark off a 7 first, you can never mark off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, right? You've blocked those off for yourself. So you have to be really smart in which dice you use and when, so that you can mark off as many of these rows as possible. And if you're the active player and you can't mark or you choose not to mark off, you get a bad square mark. I don't know, I'm sure that's what it's called in the rules, the bad square mark.
I think I've only ever played it in German, so...
Right.
I always see the German word.
Not a word that I'm comfortable
I think it's like failure or something, but yeah.
That's what it feels like, so that seems appropriate. The failure mark.
Exactly.
So if you can't mark it off, you get a failure mark. And then if you fill in like 5 in a row, and then you can get like in the red row, if you fill in 5 numbers and then you roll a 12 for red, you can lock out that die and take it out of the game. So there's kind of this interesting rush that you can take to try to like bar other people from scoring even more points. And it's quick and it's simple, but it's really engaging. It still has you making smart decisions and choices with these really simple mechanisms. And I love it, right? Well, Qwixx the app does a phenomenal job of implementing this. So you have a solo play mode, and that's great. You can just roll and try to get a high score and follow the rules. You can also use the app as just dice, like it has a little dice function. So if you want to play Qwixx, but you lose one of the dice, you can just use the app.
How did I not know this?
Yeah, and if you are playing with friends and you've got some dice, but you don't have the score pads, you can actually just use it as a score pad. Right. So it has those kind of independent functions. But one of my 2 favorite features of this game is the duel mode. And I play this app in duel mode all the time because it lets 2 players play against each other on the same device at the same time.
Right.
So you can literally put it in between you, and you've got little tap to roll the dice, and then you each score on your scorecards appropriately. And it's such a great way to kill time and chat before you're getting, a meal at a restaurant or while you're waiting in line, or it's awesome for that. I just love that duel mode. My 8-year-old daughter and I play it together a lot that way.
Aww.
She beats me a lot in it. And my second favorite feature of this game is that they've actually included alternate score sheets that are available in Europe as expansions, and as far as I know, have never been released in the US. But
I think I have the sheets.
I paid some online store
Yeah,
to
that's probably
ship
what
them
I
to
did.
me. Yeah. But they have the version where the colors are mixed up, and then they
Yes.
have the version where the numbers are mixed up.
Right.
It's a simple shift, but if you're used to playing Qwixx,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you got to switch to these new, it hurts your brain. I mean, it's such a small shift, but it's really cool that they included these expansion boards. So Qwixx for iOS is, for such a simple app, it's got a huge amount of features. It's polished. It's easy to play. It does not have online play, which would be a nice thing to add.
Yeah.
But even without online play, I think the Qwixx app just has a ton of value. So I love it. I play it all the time.
Isn't it sold? Is that the one that's sold in a bundle with the game?
I think so. Yeah, I think Outline
I
did.
think
Yeah.
That's how I bought mine, and it came with the game. Or, well, I mean, I shouldn't say that. You had the option. It was just better value to get them together. So,
Well, you got two great apps then.
yeah.
One.
No, I play the game as much as I play Qwixx, so it's really, really good. And I forgot to mention something with Star Realms. It doesn't cost anything to get it, but there are in purchase in the app, you will be able to purchase like the additions or the expansions. Qwixx, I think, was not very expensive for the two,
Right?
But yeah, I think it was a
And I of course
reasonable
forgot to write down the price, but yeah, it's not a hugely expensive app. And if you like solo play at all, or if you think that dual mode is appealing, it's a great app to have on your phone on the go.
I don't play solo ever, like rarely, and I play this all the time.
Go
All the
figure,
time.
right? It's just one of
Yeah.
those things. It's a little relaxing little game, and we're actually going to talk about some of the things that we like and don't like about board game apps up next.
We ask, you respond, we discuss. Let's talk hot topics in Victory Points. All right, so Suzanne was kind enough to put up a fun little question for everybody in the guild, and specifically, how do you feel about board game apps? So now we're going to run through a bit of the numbers to see what everyone thought. So, Bring On the Digital Wave got 18.8% of the votes. Some games are great as apps, and I enjoy them. That got a whopping 43.7% of the votes. If the app is done well and inexpensive, why not? That got 39.9%, so that was pretty close. I've got a few I enjoy, but rarely play them. That got 24.6% of the votes. They're not for me, 3.5%. And keep the digital out of my analog. And that got a 1.8%. So we did have a total of 341 voters. Thank you so much for that. And let's see what all of the listeners had to say. So we're going to start with Goulion M. What makes a board game app just that and not a video game? Is it just the source material? So I'll let you lead off with that, Suze.
I thought that was really interesting way of phrasing it. And my gut reaction was like, yeah, probably. But, I mean, the more I thought about it, I don't know. I mean, because you can see video games are getting ported into board games now.
Yeah.
And they're doing a lot to change the mechanisms and things like that. So, I don't know. For some reason, and I think it's just a labeling or terminology thing to me, calling a board game app a video game, it doesn't feel right to me. Right. Although I think it is technically correct, and there's nothing really wrong with calling them video games. So maybe it is the source material, but I think that it depends on how it's implemented.
I don't know. And I know we touched on this a little bit the last podcast that we had. I feel like if it's a video game, you're now into like a different world of even just apparatus that you're using to play it. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I feel like if you are talking about, like, when you talk about video game and computer game, are those the same? Do you know what I mean? And
like
I feel
as opposed like a console or a... Yeah,
right.
Gotcha.
It's a totally different apparatus that you're using to operate these things. I mean, computer games and video games, in my opinion, are not the same.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, they use, that kind of... I just feel like I don't know. I just feel like maybe it is just the type of things used to play it are different. So, I mean, there are reasons why people like video games. Maybe they like those types of graphics better. You know, things are implemented a little bit differently if it's on a computer game. Because if that's the case, everybody would be playing computer games. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm coming from. I don't know if I'm 100% right or people will agree with that, but...
Do you call them video games? I mean, in casual conversation, have you ever talked about them? Yeah, I never do either. I just... Maybe I've trained myself not to think that way, but yeah, for some reason they do feel different.
Could you play Fallout on your phone?
Well,
like an actual full-on game of Fallout?
Technically, no, but I mean, maybe someday. And technology being what it is.
True, and maybe the lines will be blurred a little bit more then, but some of those games that we enjoy, like I love to play Arkham Knight on Xbox One. There's no way that game is making it on a phone anytime soon, or an iPad.
You know what's funny is that you were brought up Fallout, and I'm like, I had to like go deep into my brain to go, okay, which one is Fallout? Which one is Fallout? Because that's how disconnected I've gotten from video games. I know it sounds familiar, and I know Pip-Boy.
Yes, but that's Nuka-Cola.
And so I had to go through this reel in my head to get there. I got there, I promise.
Oh, goodness. So, I mean, I think we have different aspects, and I don't think either of us are wrong, and I'm sure other people will comment on that as well. But for me, it really comes down to what tools do I need to use to play it? How is it implemented? That's a big one for me.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't draw that hard of a line. I think I'd have to think about it a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a good question.
I know one of the things, you know, because I do a board game app segment for Board Game Reference, I did it for years, and then it's kind of been very inconsistent of late, but I still do a lot of board game app coverage also on social media. And one of the issues has always been iOS versus Android. Mm-hmm. And Andrew BWM in the forum said digital version of apps have been getting better and better to the point where you can actually have a really good digital board game collection. I'm an Android user, by the way, so my selection is actually slightly more limited, even though it's no longer as large of a gap. And I was glad Andrew BWM brought this up because what I have found, and I actually have a spreadsheet online, a Google Doc online, that I track all the available board game apps that I'm aware of. So I have, I don't know, hundreds in there listed right now. Is modern day, as opposed to like 3 years ago. Oh, way back when, 3 years ago. Right? Modern day, geez Louise. Apps that are being released today in the last year, in the last 2 years, tend to come out for both platforms on a fairly regular basis. But when you run into board games that were like leaders, the tip of the wave, kind of early adopters of technology to convert into an app, iOS was a stronger platform to invest in for a vast number of reasons. And we can save that discussion for another day. But there are a lot of reasons why developers would choose to launch only on iOS, from simplicity to financial reasons, etc. But today, that gap has definitely shrunk. And I'm so glad to see that because, you know, there are obviously a lot of Android users out there that were missing out. Poor Windows Phone users.
I know, right?
Does Windows Phone still exist? I don't know.
Yeah, we're going to go with no.
Yeah. But it's really nice to see that. But certainly, if there are older games that are great games that just haven't been ported over because nobody's continued to invest in them. And I think that's a shame that it's that way. Like Kalis is an example. I love my Kalis app, but it's iOS only right now. But it's nice to see that changing.
I feel that comes down to money. Like really at the end of the day, how much money is it bringing in? And I mean, it's a business, right? At the end of the day, it's a business. People are concerned about that bottom dollar, that bottom line. And Apple, I'm not saying that there are not Android users because I know for a fact there are a lot. But I feel because Apple is in the spotlight and it's one that generally tends to produce, you know, fair amounts of money. And their app stores, from what I've been told, buying apps is huge for them. It just makes more sense for companies to say, okay, we're just going to go with making sure it's available on iOS. Now, I don't think it's right because now you're excluding a whole market, right? If you're not making it available to Android users. But I have a feeling maybe that's what it comes down to, that bottom profit or how much it's going to cost.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And I think obviously that of course, it's a business, right?
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. But hopefully that mathematical equation is shifting because we are seeing that, more and more apps are coming out on both platforms, which hopefully will continue, which I think is great.
What's the saying? Spend money to make money?
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, JT4JC says that sometimes the app takes care of shuffling, tracking that drags certain games down, but they're still fun to play. And so they are talking about some solo games like Onirim. I'm looking at you. What I loved is that then, flash forward, Gizensha was saying, Onirim would be useless as an app to me. It's something quick I can play between screens and sleep to help wind down, and the app form would just be another screen, and the shuffling actually helps that purpose since it takes on an almost meditative property.
Huh.
I loved the dichotomy between those comments, and really JT4JC hit on what I feel.
Yeah, I have to agree with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, Onirim as an app, I love the simplicity and ease of play. And, that is the one thing I don't like about Onirim is all the shuffling. Like, you are constantly shuffling. And that is a big deck to shuffle, too. It's not easy to shuffle.
I have the app, but I have yet to play it. But this is coming back to Star Realms for me. That's why, like, the first time I played Star Realms, I'm like, oh my goodness. I don't know why I felt some things were like the scoring cards and stuff.
Oh, the scoring cards are awful.
Super tedious. I was like, oh, forget that. So it's much easier than that. And even after I got the base copy, I still ended up using an app to keep score for the card game. So.
Yep. And so I really liked that, they were kind of touching on one of the benefits of app is the ease of play and that it does a lot of the work for you. I did think Gizensha's reply on kind of like getting away from the screens and that meditative quality, it's not something I personally experienced, but I thought that was a really interesting point too, and kind of a counterpoint to that I hadn't thought of. So I appreciated that comment.
Yeah, some people, that's their thing. I don't know. Some people like those aspects of the game, those little things that other people find tedious or cumbersome or just, and some people are like, no, but that's the whole point. I enjoy all aspects of the game, and I totally get that. For me, especially when it's during a lunch hour, I want ease of play. And if an app is going to ease my play, then I will use it. So, on that note, I thought that was great to see two differing perspectives, but both good. So let us look at Elias D. Kerr. I just wish they weren't so expensive. $7 for Race for the Galaxy when I can get the game for not much more seems steep to me, even though I know I would get to play the app more than the physical version. And I can say and I don't know if it's Canadian pricing, but I kind of agree that some of the apps are really expensive, and I feel that there are more sales that generally tend to happen in the States. I don't know about anywhere else, but someone will be like, oh yeah, this is like $1.99. I'm like, yeah, are you looking at the US pricing? Because it's like $10 Canadian. I'm not even exaggerating. Like, it's a huge jump sometimes. And I find, like, I think it was potentially Catan I had bought many moons ago, or one of them, and it was like $12. And people are like, oh, that's not so much. And I'm like, $12 is a lot. Especially if it's a game that you already own and you're now buying the app on top of it. Your now $40 game is now $50, $60, $70, depending on how much your app cost. So as a Canadian speaking, I find our prices are a little higher. In general, I do find some apps can be pricey. Overall, a lot of them are free and you get like in-purchase stuff. So if you want the expansions, you can do that. I mean, I don't mind $3, $4, $5, but once you start getting into the $12 to like $16 range for an app, I find that a little much.
Interesting. It's kind of, app pricing is one of my pet peeves in gaming dialogue because I hear and see a lot of price complaints.
Yeah.
And I think it's really tough for publishers and app developers to figure out the board game app market because the fact is a lot of board games are not geared towards, let me take a step back. Angry Birds ruined everything, right? I mean, Candy Crush ruined everything. Basically, these small, quick, addictive games that have a lot of small micro-purchase, microtransactions, they make companies billions of dollars.
Sure.
And of course, people want to emulate that because they also want to make billions of dollars. The problem is, for board game apps, board game apps are not geared towards that kind of financial transaction. And over time, these microtransactive games, although a lot of people will still complain about that, they still spend their money on it. And we are literally training consumers to feel like, oh, why do I have to pay $7 for that app when I can get, this and it's free? It's free.
Right.
To me, they're just such completely different beasts. And I remember when Splendor came out, there's all this.
Splendor was an expensive one, by the way.
Right. And that was the thing. There was a lot of controversy about it. And now I think what Elias was saying is interesting because they said, I know I would get to play the app more than the physical version. And isn't that interesting? You know that you would get to play it more, but you're still concerned about that price point where, hey, if you're only going to play the Splendor app a couple of times, then yeah, $7 US feels pricey. But for me, that is a beautiful, polished, full-featured app. It has more than the physical game. Sure, you don't have those chunky little poker chips, but they actually added that kind of a challenge mode in the app where there's different cities around the globe and they give you different puzzly layouts, and that is all value add. And so when I look at that, I'm like, that $7 is a fair price for a premium experience. And that's really what it comes down to, is that kind of microtransaction app versus a premium app. And so where do board games fit and how do they make that work?
Right.
I think publishers and developers are struggling with that. And I think consumers are struggling with that too. So I'm glad that somebody brought it up in the discussion in the Victory Points thread, because it's definitely something I think I pretty clearly get kind of worked up about, right?
I can see, but I can see the struggle, because you'll have some apps that are $2, $3, and then all of a sudden on the higher end of the spectrum, you have ones like Splendor, which I think it was about $12 or $13 when I bought it. And now I know someone's going to say, but you don't like Splendor. Yes, but this is the type of game I would never buy. I would never own it, but I don't mind having it as that, because when I have an hour-long bus ride, I need something to, pass the time, and that tends to do it fairly well. So yes, $12 Canadian, $13 Canadian, that's a lot. So, I mean, I get it to a certain degree, but I understand your point as well. I mean, from what you're getting out of it, I just feel for me, it's like I would have to pick, I mean, it's like not a one or the other, but then I really have to really look at the game that I'm buying and be like, okay, if you're going to be buying a, $60 game and then I want the app, like maybe factor that in and think about that at the same time. I don't know. It's a lot of, for me, I count the pennies, because I don't know. It may not be an app that I may not play it. And I feel that's when I'm not getting my money's worth. And you know what? Maybe I'm just overreacting. Maybe I'm being cheap. I don't know.
I doubt you're being cheap. I mean, everybody prioritizes their budget differently. And I think you've said it a couple times, but I haven't put much emphasis of thought on the different markets and the different prices. Like, Splendor, people were complaining about it being $6.99 in the US, but I honestly, forgive me, I did not realize it was like $12 in Canada.
Oh yeah, it was really expensive.
That's a significant price difference.
That's a lot. And a lot of the apps in Canada are like that. They're significantly more expensive. They'll have a sale, quote unquote sale, and it's like $3 off. Like, it's expensive. In Canada, everything is expensive, and I'm sure we're not the only ones. I'm sure Australia suffers from the same thing, New Zealand and those types of places. It's frustrating. And I think that's probably a part of it when you see the US, for example, getting it for $3.99 and then we're getting it for $10 more. That, I think, is something else that maybe that's for another discussion, but that's another thing that makes me kind of annoyed.
Totally fair. And I think that is, I think that's a super great point.
Yeah. So
food for thought. Yeah. We can probably talk prices and argue about that forever, but right. Scooperman, nice username. I love that. Scooperman. I think thematically, the next few comments kind of roll up into this theme of, why do you play board games, and how is app play the literal antithesis of that to some? So Scooperman says, I play games because they allow me to meet and play with people, so I've no need for digital versions. Rob DMD says, while I will always enjoy the social interaction with others and the unpredictability of other people, and I would prefer the physical version of a game, apps fill a gaming void that I currently cannot fill any other way, which resonated very strong with me.
Absolutely.
And then Joe Darts 317 says, while I also prefer the social interaction of tabletop play, apps enable me to play with friends remotely. I've played lots of games with Twitter friends, most of whom I'll never get to meet and game with in person. So I really liked that those comments kind of showed a spectrum of that
Right.
concept around app gaming about the social interaction, sitting down around a table with people, moving pieces versus that kind of the coldness and remoteness of a screen. I know I play online with people a lot. I play online with people that are online friends, just like Joe does.
Yep.
I've also played like Mysterium. The Mysterium app is gorgeous and beautiful. And I've played it online over Skype with friends.
Oh, neat.
So I played with somebody in Canada and somebody in North Carolina and all this other, and we couldn't sit down around a table together, but we had, because thanks to multiple technology pieces, we got to use the board game app, have the gameplay experience, be together, quote unquote, air quotes, and have that gaming experience even though it was around a digital sphere. So it's definitely a spectrum for me, and I fully understand that feeling of like physicality and, you know, interaction and things like that. But I don't know, I definitely lean towards, well, obviously I'm very pro board game app in general, so I'm, you know, fair enough, I'm biased on that sense. Have you ever played like over Skype with anybody?
I honestly, I find it a bit odd. I will definitely play, like I've played online, you know, through sites, and I've played a lot of apps, you know, through the phone, because I mean, I don't, generally people that I'm friends with in gaming, they all live in all parts of the world. Like, look at you, we don't live in the same city or the same country, right? So it's a great way to play with other people that I would otherwise not be able to play with. That being said, I do like to be in a social setting, even though not, like, I know it's hard to believe that I'm like an introvert. People never believe me when I say that, but it takes a lot of energy for me to play with people. But when I do, I have fun, and, you know, I'm good, but there are times I just want to be quiet and play my app by myself. So I don't know. I feel like I'm all over the place with that one, but I have a place and time for apps.
Sure. I think that makes a lot of sense. And, you know, ultimately it's a choice. Nobody's forcing anybody to play board games. Nobody's forcing anybody to play and download, you know, a board game app. It's, for me, I think it's nice to have that option and variety. I mean, I've told this story before, but I originally started playing board game apps because, you know, I had young kids and I wasn't able to get out to game nights or social meetings to play the board games that I love doing. And board game apps helped me scratch that itch, and I was grateful for it. And I've really enjoyed and gotten a lot out of it.
That's what we were talking about. And lately I've been ridiculously busy, and I know you've been busy as well. And apps are a great way to just like, oh my gosh, I need to play a game. Like, you know, I've gone to periods where I haven't been able to play a game, and thank goodness that I've had apps. Otherwise, you know, I might have gotten a little angry. So it was a nice, something nice to have to play a game, and I didn't have to, you know, go stalk someone and say, hey, let's play this game together. And, you know, no one's available, and it's available at that time, and I can do it at that moment. So touching on a bit of everything. So let us move on to WAP Caplet 2001. That's a very interesting username. And they say, I was always worried that playing the digital version of a board game would somehow make me less inclined to play the real thing. And since I love playing the real thing, I tend not to play the digital versions. Despite this misgiving, I have found that the more I play a digital version of a game, the more I want to play the real thing. So this is hilarious because, and it's not hilarious, haha, but as in odd for me, there are certain games that I have as apps that I do not own as a board game.
Sure.
So Splendor would be one. It's not a game I would be inclined to buy, but I have it as an app. Stone Age is another one. I actually really enjoy the game. I don't know why I haven't purchased it yet, but I play it on the app quite a bit, and I really like it. So it's really funny because, yes, it's true. The more you play and ones that you enjoy, you want to buy it. I just haven't made that leap yet. I'm like, I have it as the app already, and I play it enough. I don't really need to buy it at this point. I don't know. What do you think?
You know, I feel the same way. I'm not a fan of cooperative games, but I have the Pandemic board game app, and I really enjoy playing it solo. You know, and the app lets it's not fiddly. You know, I can just crank out a game on my iPad, and I don't have to pull out a board game. So I don't own physical Pandemic, but I do own the app, just like you were saying. Like there are apps I own that I don't own the physical game of. Another game, you know, Suburbia just never really clicked for me in physical form. Tracking your population and things like that, pollution, it was fiddly to me,
Yes.
in a negative way, But the app, similar to Splendor that we were talking about earlier, it added like a campaign mode that was more puzzly in nature, and it does all the population counting and stuff for you. I really enjoy the Suburbia app, where I actually don't enjoy the Suburbia board game that much because the app kind of solved some of my blocking issues with the board game. So I appreciate that. On the other hand, I don't think I saw anybody in the thread say this, but I have heard from plenty of people that have burned out on games because they've played the app to death and then they just don't even want to touch the physical game before. Even favorite games, you know, they've played them out. So it's nice to see WAP Caplet 2001 say that they've not felt that way, but I've definitely seen and heard both sides of it.
Yeah, absolutely. But that just maybe will encourage you to buy more, maybe. And I think that the last comment that really, in some ways, summarized it for me in a really beautiful way. And clearly they knew who they were talking to here. I don't want to say pandering, but pandering. Pope Sixtus says, to me, apps are good for quantity of gaming, while physical versions are good for quality of gaming. I can get a lot of games in for my absolutely favorite games that are in app form, but my most fun and memorable experiences happen at the table. I'm from New York City. I can go around the corner to a Junior's, a local franchise, and have a fairly decent pie pretty much anytime I want. But when I want that singular, outstanding experience of a pie, I will go to Steve's Authentic Key Lime Pie Place in Red Hook, Brooklyn. And my life is richer for having both. So really, I just want to go to Steve's Authentic Key Lime Pie Place now. So thanks for that. I've been to Junior's, but I have not. Actually, I'm surprised I haven't been there because I usually, when I go to New York, I stay in Brooklyn. So there you go.
Now you have a new target place to go. But I love what they say here about my most fun and memorable experiences happen at the table.
Right.
And that is absolutely true. I have burned hundreds of hours on board game apps. But I can honestly say that my top 25, my top 50 moments in gaming, no app experience comes anywhere close to that list. Because board games are about the people and the interaction when it comes down to it. But it's all about options. And I love that my life is richer for having both. And that's absolutely ultimately where I feel. Like, I think board game apps are a wonderful thing. They're great in their own right. They're great as a complement to physical games, and I am happy that I have that option with both, and I'll continue to play both. But yeah, I mean, in general, I'm going to prefer to sit around a table if that's an easy option for me.
Yeah, and I think I'm in the same boat. I mean, I have that balance. I mean, definitely play board games like in physical, like at a table. That's the majority of what I do. But I like the fact that I have options. And I know people are always worried about apps overtaking games or, you know, being like it's integrated, but it's too much of the digital world being involved. And I get that. They really should keep that separate. But if an app is integrated and it works well in conjunction with a board game, I think that's awesome. I mean, you can't avoid technology. It's the world we live in. You're going to see more of it. I'm not saying it has to take over, but, you know, it's something we need to become a little more accustomed to or comfortable with. So definitely for me, nothing replaces the table, But apps definitely have a special place in my heart, especially, if I'm in that awkward situation. We're like, oh my gosh, let's just play this little app right here while they're having an awkward conversation and I standing there, what do I do? It's great. It's happened. It's happened. So I just kind of, okay, let's just play a game.
That'll have to be a future, like, board game apps as social awkwardness saviors. Discuss.
Seriously.
Noted. Write that one down.
Works like a charm, and Qwixx is a great one for that, by the way.
Thank you, everybody who chimed in on the Board Game Geek Guild on our Victory Points thread. Thank you to everybody who, clicked on the poll and voted in the poll. We really appreciate your input, and I love talking about apps, so I am definitely glad that we got to tackle that.
Yeah, it's really good, exciting, and sorry, I didn't cut you off. I was going to say, we have been receiving the questions. I know everyone's probably like, what are the questions? We have plans for your questions. So we're definitely hoping to bring them up in the next podcast, as well as potentially a live Q&A. What do we think about that?
I don't know if I'm ready to handle that. That sounds stressful. But fun. It would be fun to do.
Yeah. So we'll keep an eye or ear or both out for that. And so questions that are not necessarily answered here, we'll definitely be looking at them for an upcoming live Q&A.
Well, that will be a wrap for episode 524. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us and talking about apps and games and tiles and all of that goodness. Coming up in episode 525, Tom and Eric will be back with top 10 one versus many games. And after that, we will have our Edison preview show as a big old podcasting group. So until then, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Yep, see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is an organization dedicated to helping gamers in need. Learn more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Suzanne, Mandy, and Eric, with assistance from Itai Perez, Derek Porter, and Rob Searing. Our theme is composed by Timothy Pinkham and arranged by Matt Bellier. And hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at coolstuffinc.com. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at dicetower@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming.
So now it is that time for Two Truths and a Lie. So I'll start. My favorite color is purple. I'm allergic to shrimp. And I love driving.
Mine are, I wrote an academic paper about Xena Warrior Princess. 2 of my teeth are false. And I was banned from a local cabaret.
Ooh, some good choices there. So good luck, everyone.